In the early days of the Black Hills Gold Rush, a man by the name of John B. Pearson stumbled upon a gulch littered with dead trees in the southwestern corner of the Dakota Territories in 1875. 1 year later, in 1876, a new settlement by the name of Deadwood, South Dakota, was established in this spot. It is a town filled with historical significance as well as natural beauty. Deadwood sits as the county seat of Lawrence County and has a residential population of 1,264. However, each summer, Deadwood sees a giant influx in its population. Tourist season in this area is no laughing matter for this town. The Black Hills, especially where Deadwood resides, has a lot to offer. People from across the country and even outside the U.S. borders flock to the hills to enjoy the amenities available. These amenities include hiking, fishing, camping, biking, sightseeing, and shopping. But tourists aren't the only ones who enjoy the colorful venues available in Deadwood. Deadwood is a town of quality where all ages are welcome. But perhaps the faint of heart should be weary. Amidst the cobblestone streets and glamorously flashing lights from any number of Deadwood's bustling gambling houses, there lies a blanket of mystery, an eerie sense of the Wild West that still lingers, looming over the modern age of Deadwood. Reports of haunted activity seem to be everywhere in this town. But why? Perhaps it is the direct result of legendary figures that once inhabited the town in the late 19th century. Wild Bill Hickok, Calamity Jane, Potato Creek Johnny, and Seth Bullock are some of the most notable figures to ever come out of Deadwood. They came into this town and made an impact, but did they ever leave? Some say not. The lore of this haunted Deadwood brings more than just tourists to town. It brings adventure seekers. It brings everyday people in search of the paranormal. And it brings paranormal investigators. The search for answers to these looming questions brought us to the doorstep of the historic Adams House in the heart of downtown Deadwood. The Adams House is reached by taking the appropriately named Cemetery Street onto 22 Van Buren Avenue and rests on top of a hill overlooking a small portion of the rest of this gold mining town where it has lied for decades, preserved as a historical site. It was here that in 1892, the original owners of the house, Harris and Anna Franklin, built their elegant home. The Franklin family arrived in Deadwood in 1877 along with their son Nathan. The Franklin family made their fortune in the sale of alcohol to the new settlers coming in during the gold rush. They later would diversify into cattle, mining, and banking in order to sustain their status as one of the wealthiest families in the Dakotas. The house was outfitted with central heat, hot and cold running water, electric lighting, and a bell system to summon servants, all of which were nearly unheard of at this point in time. For this reason, a house hand-built for the Franklin family garnered the reputation of the most elegant house on this side of the Missouri River for nearly 100 years. The home served as a permanent residence of Harris and Anna Franklin until Anna passed away in 1902. 3 years later, in 1905, Harris sold the property to their son Nathan and his wife Ada for the gift of $1. Under the new owner, the house was structurally the same. However, the Franklin family continued to prosper in new ways. With the second generation of Franklins under the roof, the house continued to entertain important guests within the 7,000 feet of available floor space. But the structure of the Franklin family changed yet again during this time frame. The Franklins owned and operated a local pharmacy, and Nathan acted as the president of the First National Bank in Deadwood. So the family of Nathan and Ada, along with their daughter, cared for the house for the next 15 years. The house underwent small remodels in 1904, and 10 years later, in 1914, Nathan was elected mayor of Deadwood, where he served until 1918. 2 years after his final term, for the first and only time in the house's history, the Adams house was sold outside of the Franklin family in 1920. For a mere $8,500, a businessman by the name of W.E. Adams bought the house and would become the last permanent owner of the establishment before passing away in 1934, leaving the house dormant for several decades before it was again purchased by the Deadwood Historic Preservation Commission in 1992, where it was remodeled and opened to the public as a historical site in the year 2000. W.E.'s largest contribution to the city of Deadwood was the financing of the Adams Museum, for which the site was named in 1930. That brings us to today, where nearly 90 years have passed since anyone has lived in the Adams house full time, and the house has been preserved as an integral part of the history of the city of Deadwood. Ordinarily, the Adams house is closed to visitors at this time of year. However, upon contacting select caretakers of the house, they were gracious enough not only to grant us access to the interior of the elegant home, but introduce us to Mark and Mo of Black Hills Paranormal Investigations in order to try and connect us with the spirits of the most influential families in the history of Deadwood. Before we began our search, we sat down with Mark and Mo respectively to discuss their previous experience with the Adams house and the goals of Black Hills Paranormal Investigations.
My name is Maurice Miller, and we spell that M-A-U-R-I-C-E, Miller, of course, M-I-L-L-E-R. My title is Lead Investigator for Black Hills Paranormal Investigations. With Black Hills Paranormal Investigations, we've been operating for about 10 years, in and around Deadwood and the surrounding communities out here in the hills.
After our crew got comfortable with Mark and Mo, they showed us the tools of the trade that Black Hills Paranormal uses to conduct their searches. They each assured us that the goal of these investigations is not to simply scare people into believing that spirits are everywhere, but rather to identify the cause of the strange activity and attempt to determine the source of the issue.
Well, I think obviously people are drawn to Deadwood for the obvious reasons nowadays, of course, with the advent of the gambling. But Deadwood has a very long and colorful history. And as far as the hauntings go, I would almost say there's like a stain on the area, because just about everywhere you go, there's some kind of story. Of a ghost or somebody dying or being killed, and obviously with all the decadence and debauchery that happened here, it doesn't really surprise me.
During the search, our crew were given pieces of equipment as we went from room to room attempting to contact previous owners of the house. The equipment we used measured everything from radio frequencies to static charge, all to find the elusive ghosts of the Adams house.
As far as all the years that we've been investigating in here, there's been claims, obviously, of people seeing shadows, hearing footsteps, and as you'll see later on, we have captured those things. Now, some people think it's Mr. Adams himself. Some think it's the Franklins. Some even think it's Mildred. There's a whole plethora of people here that they think it's different things. And this isn't coming from Deadwood history. This is coming from people that have been here, that have taken the tours and stuff. And what we've been able to find so far is, yes, there's activity here. Who exactly it is, we really don't know.
The ghosts of the Adams house still remain unseen, but their impact will still be felt throughout Deadwood. The Adams house will remain an integral part of Deadwood's history. The fact that the house is still standing today is a testament to how much the building actually means to the city of Deadwood.
Well, it's interesting because all the stories, because of Deadwood's history and you look back through Deadwood's history, there's actually a long history of people reporting hauntings and things like that in Deadwood. You know, it's gone back to like 1878. And what's interesting is some of the people say that if the stories aren't true, they ought to be, and which I find really interesting. So it's kind of compelling when you start hearing some of the claims of activity, some of the things that some people have reported, are some of the same things that you're hearing today with people reporting it, you know, at some of the businesses and some of the locations here in town. We were in here, I was walking into the library. Mo, the lead investigator, he was in the library but standing in one location, so as I walked in, I thought I saw him standing over by the bookshelf, bent over looking at something, and then he stood up and I go, "Hey Mo, what's going on?" And then all of a sudden Mo answers me from across the room, and I looked over at him real quick and then looked back, and whatever that figure was gone.
Well, for one, because of the stories, and like you touched on already, because you know, everybody loves a good ghost story. But the neat thing is, like I said, we've been operating around Deadwood for the past 10 years now. We've actually captured things, and we do have a decent following, and people follow us. You know, and when we do capture things, we put it up on our website or our Facebook page and stuff for others to see. Along with that, when we give the tours here at the Adams, you know, we have a whole pile of people with us. So when things happen, they're there to witness it as well. We've also had people leave because something has happened, and we've had people that come up and told us before the tour start, you know, we're going to go on the tour, we're a skeptic, we really don't believe what's going on. And then they'll come through, and then after the tour they come up to us and go, you know, that was pretty crazy. I don't have an explanation for it. We had a lady come in with us, and we were in the library, and we were asking for something to happen, you know, our standard stuff. Hey, if you're in here, can you knock or make a noise? And sure enough, there was a knock, and the lady puts her hands up and goes, "That's it, I am out of here." And she just left completely. She wouldn't even finish the tour. And with Black Hills Paranormal Investigations, we let the evidence speak for itself. We won't try to convince anybody, you know, otherwise.
Is there anybody here with us right now?
What did I ask him to tell it? If you said to go home, right?
Yeah.
Do I hear a whisper that says go home? And I said, no. As far as the paranormal goes, I've had an interest in it since I was a kid. My mother and grandmother were kind of into it, but they were into the wacky kind of side of things with crystals and dowsing and all, and that wasn't my bag. But as I got older, and I listened to her talking, you know, Mom talking to her friends and stuff, and I started reading different stories. Not the R.L. Stein goosebump kind of stuff, but like a case study kind of thing. And it dawned on me that all the claims you see all around the world are all exactly the same once you pull the layers of the onion back, i.e. the cultures and, you know, what their ghost looks like. But the actual claims themselves, what happens, they're all the same. And I thought, well, is this part of the human condition, or is there something to this? And that's what drew me to do what I do now.
With us too, he's sleeping.
Okay, we're up here in the smoking room. Nice big fat echo. Katie's on the other side with a millimeter. We've got a periscope, and we've got the geophone on the floor right now. And there's a few different things, if anybody's out there with us, that you can use to let us know you're here, just for fun. Or you can bang on a wall or something if you want us to leave, but you gotta let us know.
Or tell us in this device that Mo is holding. And I started the process with another friend, another co-author, and what we had done was we had come here to Deadwood. We did a lot of research at the library, talking to a lot of the people in some of the businesses where they've had activity. We actually came here to the Adams house, and the people here at Deadwood History, they were a great resource to come to for any of that information. But a lot of the research that we did, we started to find a lot of stories about past hauntings that took place. And there was actually one haunting that took place that was reported in one of the old newspapers here in 1878, where the actual journalist himself, the newspaper man, had gone to the location, the Lone Star Bar, which is no longer here, and he wrote that he actually observed ghostly apparitions of a female and a male walking up some stairs. So pretty interesting. Back many years ago, when I was in the Army, I had an experience happen to me when I was stationed in Germany, and it really just kind of shook me. I couldn't figure out what the heck it was that I experienced. And when I got out of the military, I went into law enforcement. I was a police officer for 26 years. And I'd always had that mindset, very skeptical, very show me the evidence speaks, anything else, doesn't matter.
I came from a different group. I wasn't with Black Hills Paranormal Investigations originally. I was with a different group in Rapid City. And we were in operation about 2 years. And Black Hills Paranormal Investigations, we were operating concurrently at the same time. We all knew each other. And the other group disbanded, and these guys here were kind enough to bring me onto the team.
And because of my analytical mind, I kept trying to figure out, okay, what was it I experienced? After I retired, and we moved here, it was one of those things that I was so interested in that I joined the group. It was 10 years ago, and I came in, and I could say that I was probably the biggest skeptic in the group, because it takes an awful lot to convince me that something's paranormal, because we're always looking for a reasonable explanation, because probably out of all of the claims of activity, you may find that 95% of them are reasonable explanations behind them, where you can say, yeah, this is what that was. There's that small 5% that we're dealing with, and I can tell you, even though I'm a skeptic, I'm an open-minded skeptic, but I'm not so open-minded where I'm going to let my brains fall out and all my common sense go out. I still look at it, but I can still tell you that some of those experiences I've had, like in this house, when I saw that whoever that was bent over and stand up, I don't know who or what that was, but I couldn't find a reasonable explanation for it. So there are always things that leave you asking more and more questions, and that's what keeps pushing me towards learning more and more about what we're doing here. But yeah, that's what got me into it. Well, it's funny because once we are finished with an investigation, we'll take all of our equipment, bring it back home with us. So anytime that we'll set up digital recorders, digital video recorders, and all that. And when we get home and sit down and go over all that evidence, and then if we pick up something...
1 second. What people don't understand is, like he said, let's say we're investigating, let's say we have 6 people on the team. And everybody puts out a digital recorder, that's 6 recorders. If we investigate for 6 hours, doing the math, that's 36 hours of audio or video that we have to go over in real time again to see if we captured anything.
I've got my best sleep doing this.
Exactly. White noise is the best sleep aid ever.
But anyways, getting back to being serious, it's once if we tag something on there that we think might be paranormal, we'll bring it back to the team as a whole.
And then the fight starts.
And then we'll all go over it, because we have a common ground here that we basically have agreed to, saying, listen, if any of us have any doubt whatsoever that is not paranormal, then we just throw it out. I mean, we have to be 100% sure. We've even gone so far as to go back to a location and set up the same scenario to try to see if we can recreate what we captured. And if we can recreate it, then obviously it's not paranormal. If we cannot recreate it, then it just leaves us with, okay, that's a possibility that this could be paranormal. So we never, like Mo had said earlier, we never filter anything. We never throw anything through filters to try to bring it out to you. No. You know what we do? We turn up the sound and give it to the client. And we don't try to tell the client anything about what's in the evidence. Like if we have an EVP, which is an electronic voice phenomena, it says, I love you, we don't tell the client that this is what you're going to hear, because that's going to set it in their mind that that's what they're going to hear.
And along with what he said, all of our audio captures, for instance, the EVPs, if you can't readily identify what's being said, we throw it out. And I'm sure over the years we've thrown out some really credible evidence, but because it wasn't crystal clear, you really can't say it's anything.
Well, and it's interesting because there's one piece of evidence that Mo and I, to this day,
10 years. 10 years. We've been arguing over
it. It was a violin.
It's a TV show theme song. He's here
no,
next
it was
door.
a violin.
No,
it was
sorry.
clearly a violin because you hear.
Thanks for playing, buddy.
No, but see, that's the type of thing. Since we weren't sure about that piece of evidence,
we found it out.
Think that it was probably paranormal, but we still had to throw it out because there was just that much of a difference of opinion.
Well, the same thing. We were on an investigation in Rapid City. I had a handheld recorder, and I thought I captured a shadow. It was so clear. It was amazing. You see me, the shadow that I'm casting with an IR light behind me. There's a head popping in and out, and I was like, "Holy guacamole, man! We got the Holy Grail." And I was like, "Yeah, we're awesome." And he's like, "Dude, there was somebody standing behind you." I'm like, "Of course there was. It was a shadow." He's like, "No, it was the owner trying to peek around and see what I was doing." But that's what we have to do. We have to self-police.
Yeah, because we have worked very, very hard to build our credibility, not only in this field but in the area. And you could probably ask anyone from Deadwood, the Deadwood history people, and they'll tell you. I mean, we come in very respectful. We never provoke.
No,
we don't need to, because you come into a beautiful home or you're into a location. How would you feel if someone came into your home and started yelling and screaming at you?
Exactly. And with that being said, like if you watch all the shows, hey, big butthead, and they scream and holler. Now, if I'm going in, especially if we're going into a residence where people live, we can't go up there and stir up whatever might be there and then go, thanks, we're leaving. Because now these people are stuck with it. We have to look at it like Mark said. We have to look at, let's say if it was a living human being and we walked in, you have to be cordial, respectful, because like he said, how would you feel if somebody just barged in your door and was going, hey, anybody in here? Hey, my name's Bob. You'd be like, get the hell out of here.
And history plays a huge part of what we do. Mm-hmm. You never want to overlook the history of a location. And look at Deadwood. Deadwood itself has an incredible amount of history to it. And if you understand the history of a location, and then when you conduct an investigation like in the Adams house, and you know the history here and understand it, you can use that history to help you at the end when you're analyzing evidence. It's like when we captured, we know that there was a fire up in the smoking room.
That you learned about on the tour.
Right, during the Franklin's anniversary. But what's interesting about that is during one of our very first investigations here, we had a recorder set up, we got back, we're listening to it, and you could very clearly hear a female screaming fire. So that ties in with the history of the location. So that's very cool when you start getting things like that.
Because not only does it bring validation to the client because they've called us in for whatever reason, but when you can tie it into the location, be it a private residence, or like Mark's talking about, like here at the Adams, it's incredible. Because we know these things happen, and now we have evidence of something other than us. Like it's still going on, basically. Obviously, we've been in Adams a million times, so it's a little bit different. But like when we have a client call us, it could be a business or a resident, private home residence. If you say, okay, I hear footsteps every night at 8 o'clock, or Satan's in my basement, or whatever it may be, we're going to do our damnedest to prove you wrong. Not because we're trying to be mean, but we're trying to find a logical explanation for what's going on.
Well, the bottom line is we tell people when they call us to have us come in to their homes or whatever, we tell them we are not coming in to prove
a haunting
or that you have paranormal activity. We're coming in to try to disprove it. We're coming in to try to find reasonable explanations.
And then when you don't have any, that's when the fun stuff starts. Because now you're like, uh-oh, what have we got here?
Because whatever you got over and above that is gravy. And who doesn't love gravy? I know I do.
Very nice. Very nicely put. Very nice.
The next stop on our paranormal tour of Deadwood is the Bullock Hotel, another haunted site in the town's history. The Bullock Hotel was founded in 1895 and named after famous Western figure Seth Bullock. It was later redone in the 1990s. Some say that the ghost of Seth still haunts the hotel to this day. You can even go on a ghost tour in the building to search for him. The owner of the Bullock Hotel, Seth Bullock, was born on July 23rd, 1849, and would eventually become one of the most influential figures in not only the town of Deadwood, but the Wild West as a whole. Upon his arrival in the town, he was appointed sheriff of the brand new Lawrence County. He never killed a single man while serving as the sheriff of Lawrence County. In 1894, the local hardware store was burnt to the ground, and Bullock decided to build Deadwood's first hotel over the original warehouse. This eventually became the hotel we know today. One of our group members was able to participate in a paranormal tour of the hotel just a short time ago. Reports mention a tall, ghostly figure wandering the halls and basement, as well as the restaurant. Other statements seem to imply that activity increases when the staff aren't as productive as they should be, almost as if the ghost of Seth is ensuring his hotel is in top condition. Plates and glasses found in the hotel seem to shake and fall, all on their own. Appliances such as showers and lights flicker on and off, seemingly by themselves. Guests have also reported hearing footsteps, as well as singing and humming when nobody else is to be seen. As the Bullock Hotel continues to receive visitors each year, its paranormal stories garner nationwide attention, even gathering reports from the likes of the TV show Unsolved Mysteries. Stories like these are just some of the reasons Deadwood has made a name for itself amongst the paranormal community. They bring life to the local culture, as well as help add variety to this unique area of the Midwest. After all the experiences our crew went through, it is easy to see why this small town in the middle of nowhere is such a hotbed for those seeking to contact those who have passed. From the Adams House, which held within it the most influential figures of its era for decades, to the Bullock Hotel, which has provided a place to stay for weary travelers for over 100 years, all the while greeting them with a strange presence at the door and stories to fuel the fire. At the end of the day, Deadwood is a fantastic place to be. Whether you have lived there your whole life, or you're just passing through, there is something for everyone. Just don't let the ghosts scare you away.